Uh, uh. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Deuce with Davis Spindle. Happy Tuesday. Today, I am going to tell you the story about how I accidentally went on a date with a Chargers dance team girl, like one of the cheerleader dance team members. It's a good story. So, starting it off, I have been driving cabs or some type of cab since I was about 18 years old. On the island of Martha's Vineyard, when I was 18, I drove 15-person cab vans, and it was the most fun thing in the world. I used to do bar closing. I used to do all this different stuff. It was a blast, and I would keep a notebook, which I'm sure I've lost now, or it's in the basement somewhere of my parents' house or something. But I kept these notebooks that whenever something ridiculous would happen to me, I would write it in the notebook. And it was the best job to have at 18 or 19 because when my friends were bored, there wasn't that much they could do at night. I had 15 seats in the van. I would just pick up 2 or 3 of them, and they would just drive around with me for an hour or two. And we would just hang out, drive around, pick up some people, have fun with them, drop them off wherever. And it was really like one of the coolest jobs. I've always liked it. Even when I was 23, my last summer on the vineyard, I was actually a cab dispatcher. Little known fact, I dispatched the cabs and ran the cabs for Seth Meyers' wedding. So there you go. It was organized by my boss and everything was put together by her. But my job was to make sure the cabs were where they were supposed to be at the right times and manage them in and out of all of their wedding duties. So if it weren't for me, Seth Meyers wouldn't have gotten married. Or if it weren't for me, the people at Seth Meyers' wedding probably wouldn't have gotten to wherever they were supposed to go before and after. That's probably more likely. But yeah, I've been doing that for a while. So it only made sense when I moved to California. I moved out here without a job. I was playing poker for a living, which is another story for another podcast. But after doing that for a little bit, I wanted to supplement my income with something steady that I could do whenever I wanted. And so that was right around the beginning of Lyft. And so I was an OG to Lyft in San Diego. There were very few people. When I signed up, I got a mustache. I mean, that's how early in the game it was. I had the mustache on the front of my car, driving around, picking up people. And I did it for a long time. I haven't done it now in about a year. But I used to do it every now and then if I needed extra money, if I wanted something fun to do. It was great because I needed some consistency before I got the job that I was getting. And one night I was driving, I believe it was a Friday or Saturday night. I was driving for Lyft and just picking people up, dropping them off. And 99% of the people I've met in Lyft and Uber are amazing people. And I do have like 1 or 2 negative stories, which I probably will tell at some point. But the positive people, like everyone is, for the most part, very, very cool. And so I'm trying to be talkative, but when you're doing cab driving, you have to kind of feel out your passenger. Some people want to chat with you. They're new to the area. They've been drinking. They're having fun. They want loud music. They want to whatever. Other times people will just kind of want to be quiet. So you're feeling out who your passenger is. And so it was middle of the evening, for when you're doing a bar closing night. So probably like 11:30. Maybe closer to 12. So I guess late for regular people, but if you're driving a Lyft and you're doing the bar close, which ends at 2, that's still pretty early in the night. And I had picked up a couple people, and I had a ride request by this guy outside of a bar in Pacific Beach in San Diego. And I went there, and I pull up, and he hugs and kisses this girl, and she hops in the car. And so it wasn't the original person who requested the lift, but she hopped in. And it was weird, actually, because he went in for like the face mouth kiss, like, you know, the kiss that people do when they like each other, sometimes with tongue, sometimes not, but like the one where they're like, oh yeah. He went in for one of those, and she was like, nah, I'm not doing it. And she went cheek. She cheeked him. Ladies, really embarrassing if you're a dude and you go in for it and you get cheeked. That's basically like a slap in the face, but the sting lasts longer. It is the emotional sting of the heart. And that's what that gentleman felt right there. So he went in for the and got the no way. So she eventually gets in the car after they like hug one more time and talk about it. He goes in the bar and she hops in. And I was like, hey, how's it going? You in a fight with your boyfriend? Because, you know, icebreakers right off the top. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, I mean, it doesn't take an expert to realize that he was going for the mouth and you just cheeked him real hard, you know, because I'm not beating around the bush. I got to make it as awkward as possible. And she starts laughing and she's like, oh, that's not my boyfriend. Like, someone I know who worked an old job with me and such, and he wanted to go in the bar and he was with a bunch of his friends and I didn't really want to be with him, and it's still earlier and I work 2 jobs tomorrow even though I don't work till later. I just didn't want to go with them. So like I had already been in there and I decided it was time to leave. And so we start laughing about it and we start talking, and I asked her what her name is, and she said her name was Lisette. She was smoking. She was full-fledged smoke show, smokestack, fire flames, all the words that you can use. Very hot. And so we were laughing, talking, and she puts in the address or whatever, and I start driving her. And we start talking about different stuff, like what she does for work. I don't remember the small talk, but it was interesting. It was going kind of well. She seemed pretty smart, and drive her to where her car is, which I guess was parked in somebody else's house. And I park there, and we just keep talking, and she's not really getting out of the car. And we just keep talking and talking to the point where I'm like, okay, this can't be a coincidence. Like, this woman is very attractive, but that dude was not her boyfriend, and she's still in the car. And now, like, I'm either losing money or I'm just an idiot. So, like, either way, we have to get this to the end. And so finally she, like, starts laughing at me, and she'd been, like, leaning in towards where I was talking to her, and she's about to get out of the car. And I was like, hey, I know you said you work a little bit later, but I don't live, like, very far from here. Do you want to hang out and just keep talking a little bit? Like, I grab a couple beers and we can just hang out at my house outside. I have, like, a really nice outside area. And she was like, yeah, actually, you seem really cool. I would like that. And so she hops in her car, and I was like, okay, you know, like, give me your phone number so you can, like, make sure you follow me or whatever. And so she does that, and then she hops in her car, and we're stopping at the liquor store on the way to my house. So Lisette and I drive. She follows me to the liquor store. We hop in there, and she comes in after me. We're, like, looking at different beers, and I think we got 1, maybe 2 6-packs, like 1 each. And I was like, oh, I'm going to pay for them both because, you know, I'm chivalrous and, if, you know, whatever. I don't get to buy 6-packs for beautiful women as often as I'd like to pretend. So, hey, who cares? Worth it. So I walk up to the counter, pay for them. The guy looks at my ID, and he asks for hers. And she's like, oh, I just realized I left my wallet, like, all the way back in my car. And he's like, don't worry about it. Like, how old are you? And she said, you know, her birthday was, like, 1992 or 93, which is, like, crazy to me because if you tell me you're born in 1992 or 1993, my brain immediately assumes you're, like, 9. Like, the idea of you being 1992, like, in my brain, immediate quick math, I'm like, oh, you're 8 or 9, like 2nd grade, max. But the reality is people who are born in the early 90s are, like, in their early to mid-20s. So we got out of there, we grabbed the 6-packs, I'm like, okay, I'm a couple blocks away. So she comes back to my house, and we park, and we're just out in my front yard. I had a really cool house at the time. Big fake rock wall with a waterfall and a hot tub, which is why I was driving Lyft and working like 2 and 3 jobs and still playing poker, because I had this beautiful house that I didn't get to hang out in as much as I wanted because I was constantly working to pay for it. So obviously I cut my night a little bit short, but I was like, she's cute. It's worth it. Things are going well. So we were talking for like a while, and eventually the conversation ended up getting a little serious, and she was telling me how she moved from New Mexico, and like she didn't have really a great relationship with her parents, and she had moved out here when she was like 19 with a boy, and it didn't work out, and she thought he was like the one and all this crap, and she went to this, I say crap, it was probably a big deal to her, but for me, I was like, just keep talking and I'll keep sort of listening. But she's really cute, and she seemed smart. She had finally gotten her bachelor's, some type of medical science, if I remember correctly. She was going to go back to more school, and so we started talking, and eventually she just drops this bomb on me in the middle that she for the last 2 seasons have been a dancer, like a charger girl, the girls that dance in between the quarters and during the timeouts and stuff, a cheerleader dancer for the Chargers. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And we started talking about that, and she told me she quit so she could try to go, so she could finish her degree, and then so she could finish up her degree. She wanted to graduate and then eventually go on to post-grad. And so I was like, oh, that must have been a hard decision. She's like, I was in the middle of tryouts this year, and I just couldn't do it with all the time management and all the home games. It just didn't make sense. So we were laughing and talking about that. And eventually we just keep talking. I'm like, how did that not come up when you were telling me about all this other stuff? And it turns out she was like, oh, yeah, like I get nervous telling people off the bat. I feel like they're going to judge me differently, but you seemed really cool, and you didn't even notice any of that stuff, so I told you I work like these other jobs, which I do, but like, I do this too. And eventually I was like, wait, so, the night starts to wind down, and she's like, all right, it's like late. Now it's getting to be like 2 a.m. She's like, I have to go back. Like, I do have to work tomorrow afternoon, blah, blah, blah. And the vibe had become so chatty that, like, eventually I was like, oh, there's not much I can do with this. I think everyone understands when there's, like, too much chatter, especially someone like me who likes to talk about a lot. If there's too much chatter, the moment's broken down a little bit. I'm like, okay, she's great, but at this point, like, it's late. I've worked probably a double, and it's time for me to go home. It's time for you to go home so I can go back into my house. So the night's starting to wind down. Before she finishes, I was like, I have to ask you a question. It's sitting a little weird with me. Like, what happened at the liquor store when you forgot your wallet? Was that, like, legit? She was like, no, I have to be honest. Like, I'm 20 years old. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I'm 20. Like, I didn't want you to judge me, and I didn't want to say no. And, like, next thing I know, we end up in the liquor store, and I had told you I was 21 because you, like, picked me up in front of the bar. And for some reason, I, like, didn't want to break out of that because I'd been in the bar with my fake ID. And so I would just, assumed it was fine. But then when in the liquor store, I didn't want to use it. And so I just, like, panicked and just said I didn't have one. And I was like, that is so weird. And she was like, yeah, but this and this. And I was like, okay, well, what else are you lying about? Is there anything else? She's like, yeah, actually, my name's not Lizette. And I was like, what? She's like, that's my middle name. I told you it was my first name, but it's not. Like, my real name's Elizabeth. And I was like, what is going on? Like, I just spent 4 hours talking with you. You're telling me all these heartfelt things. You basically lied about your age and your first name. This is crazy. And so she was kind of weird. And then she ended up being, like, extremely religious, like, very much uber Christian. And it was, like, kind of a roadblock for us a little bit because it was so intense for her that it started to take over a lot of the conversation. So eventually I'm like, okay, well, like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, let's get out of here. It's 2:30 now. Like, if you need to go home, maybe, like, I'm getting tired, giving the hints without being like, you need to leave, giving the polite hints like, oh, I'm getting out of here. So I walk her back to her car. It's her time to leave. The car's like 3 blocks away. I start to walk, and as I'm walking, I'm thinking, like, dude, this is a Chargers girl. She's, like, super cute. So, you have to try to kiss her. And so now it's, like, getting, like, 2:45, and we get back to her car. And she was like, it was really nice hanging out with you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it was great hanging out with you, too. You seem really nice. Really enjoy spending time with you. She's like, yeah, cool. Like, I'll talk to you at some point soon. And I leaned in to kiss her, and she cheeked me. Just like the dude in front of the bar. I felt the sting. That's how I could describe the sting earlier so perfectly. Felt it. It was an emotional backhand to the heart, ladies. That's how it felt, like that. Oh, man. And I was like, I'm an idiot. Like, I never should have gone into this. I'm not even really that into this girl at this point. But, like, the whole she's beautiful thing is, like, captivating me a little bit. Like, I just went to pull the trigger. And she literally cheeked me. And I think I said, like, oh, man, you cheeked me. And she's like, I'm sorry. It's late. Like, I got to get out of here. Da-da-da. You should call me. And, like, we'll hang out again sometime. I'm like, okay. So I go back to my house, wake up. I think it's the next day. Go into my regular office, tell people the story. Because I work with some very smart social media savvy people. They are searching and searching, trying to find Elizabeth, the Charger girl, and eventually they find her and these videos of her, and it was her. So she was an actual Charger girl, because by that point in time, I didn't even think that was true. I was like, this girl has lied about everything, her age, her name, like she probably doesn't even do this. But it was actually her. And so finally, I texted her and got no response. And then I was thinking, like, she's maybe a little bit more traditional. Like, I'll give her a call. So a couple days later, I gave her a call. And I called, and the number was, like, not in service. So I had been texting a number that didn't exist. So I got a fake number, a fake age, and a fake name for the accidental date that I went on with the Chargers cheerleader. But I did go on a date to my backyard with the Chargers cheerleader. She is pretty cute, and she actually was the cheerleader because we looked it up and saw the videos. And when I went in for the kiss, I got cheeked. And so that is one of my many cab driving stories, but the only one involving, like, a cheerleader. And that is the end of part 1. For part 2 today, I just have a little tidbit of something we covered in the news that I thought was really interesting. And what that was, I've been talking a little bit about, like, technology development, how it's kind of changing society. I've been on the driverless car things, and even, the meatless movement a little bit, the anti-beef thing, and some of that stuff. It's just those thoughts, like how we're progressing with climate change and different social awareness and how it ties in with technology. Well, I saw the stat the other day, and YouTube had a meeting, its annual advertisers meeting. And at the meeting, the CEO got up, and she said that on prime time television hours, YouTube has more people between the ages of 18 and 49 watching them than all of the cable channels combined. And it has 10 times more people watching during that primetime hour than the most watched television show. So if you think everyone in the world tunes into Walking Dead or whatever, because I think that's the most popular one, 10 times that many people are on YouTube at that exact time watching YouTube videos. So what that means to me is if you're someone who likes to create, you want to make movies with your friends, you want to make music, you want to make a podcast like this one, there's an audience. Because you used to have to have incredible money and connections to broadcast your word out to mass amounts of people. And you think about the way that's developed in time, handwritten letters eventually, were originally we had the Pony Express, and then they're driven by train and flown and blah, blah, and then the evolution of television as a medium and radio as a medium, and then television and the way to get your message out. And now, because of the beauty of technology, we can all get our message out directly from our phones and our computers and from YouTube, and we can do it instantly. So don't be afraid to create something. It's a very saturated market. Everyone's creating something, but more people are consuming content that people or individuals are creating than ever before. So if you want to make something, just make it. Don't judge by how many people watch it, but know that you could have many people watch it. You could have the right person watch what you're making. that is the end of the Morning Deuce. Happy Tuesday, and I hope you all kill it at the office, at work, or whatever you're doing with your day. D-Spin, I'm out. Hashtagtrending.com. Hashtag tell your hot friends, especially if they're cheerleaders, because I'm trying to really get that kiss on the lips next time. I'm out.
Don't stop.